guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. So today's video was requested by you guys, so I went and asked on my social media what video would you like to see next on my channel, and the majority of you answered lenses. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Now before I get into the different types of lenses, I want to ask you, what are the numbers on the side of your lens? So if I take my lens, you will see I have 18 to 55 millimeters. So that means if I shoot a subject at 18 millimeters, it means I'm going to see more of my subject and the area surrounding it. Whereas if I have to shoot at 55 millimeters, it means that I'm going to see less of the area surrounding my subject. Now if you have a lens like this one, which is an 18 to 135 millimeter lens, it just means that you have a lens that has a longer focal range, which means you can zoom in closer to your subject. And if at this point in the video you are confused because your lens only has one number, this lens means that you only have one focal length, and there's a specific type of name for these type of lenses, so I will get back to that later on in the video. So let's go back to the 18 to 55 millimeter lens. Now we've covered the numbers on the side of the lens, so let's go to the front of the lens now. So if I look at my lens in the front, I can see 1:3.5 to 5.6. Now this is the aperture of the lens. So if I shoot at 3.5, my aperture is going to be bigger and therefore letting more light. And if I shoot at aperture 5.6, my aperture is going to be smaller and letting less light. Now that I've covered what the numbers mean on the lenses, let's get into the different types of lenses. So my first lens is a kit lens. Now this 18 to 55 millimeter is a kit lens. It came with my camera when I bought the camera. And you'll also notice that on the side of the lens it has AM and then there's another switch VR. So the A stands for autofocus and the M is manual focus. And then the second switch is VR, which is vibration reduction. Now these kit lenses tend to be smaller in size and more inexpensive compared to your other lenses. So on to the next lens, which is a variable aperture lens. Now what this lens does is as you zoom in, your aperture changes. So as I zoom in, my lens or my aperture will go to 3 to 4 and so forth, which means as my aperture gets smaller as I'm zooming in, less light is coming in and vice versa. So the opposite of variable aperture lens is fixed aperture lens, which brings me to my third type of lens. Now these lenses, as you zoom in, your aperture stays the same. So I can be at an aperture of 3 and as I zoom in, my lens will stay at the aperture of 3. Fancy, I know, right? But these lenses come at an expense. Because these lenses require more glass, that is basically what makes it more expensive, but it's what makes it more heavier. Next on my list is a prime lens. Now a prime lens is a lens, it doesn't zoom in or out, it has one focal length. So if you want to get closer to your subject, you have to physically move closer to your subject or vice versa. Now you may be thinking, that's no fun, you know. And I must say the benefits of having a prime lens is the prime lenses generally have a bigger f-stop, which means you are going to have a better depth of field and your backgrounds are going to look more blurry. An example of a prime lens would be a 35mm or a 50mm. Now these lenses tend to be sharper because if you think about it, the lens isn't really moving because you have to physically move yourself forward or backwards. So next on my list is this lens. And it is also this lens as well as this lens. And I'm sure you could have guessed it by now, it is a zoom lens. So the benefits of having a zoom lens is that it allows you to get closer to your subject without having to physically move your body forward or backwards from your subject. Now to basically sum up what a zoom lens is, it is basically a lens that allows your camera to take a long shot or a close-up shot by varying the focal length. So on to the next lens on my list, which is a fisheye lens. Now, according to Google, a fisheye lens is a ultra-wide angle lens that produces distortion intended to create a wide panoramic image. Now, people often use fisheye lenses to take photos of buildings, and this just creates more of an interesting image because of the distortion it creates. The angle of view on these lenses is usually between around 100 and 180, which is why when you see these images that the lens produces, it usually has sort of a roundness to it on the sides of the image. So the next lens I have for you is a macro lens. Now, macro lenses are usually not zoom lenses but prime lenses. Now, generally what a macro lens does, it is very well suited to taking photos of small objects, and you may be thinking, well, my zoom lens can take photos of small objects as well. But there's a difference. The difference is that the macro lens usually makes that small object look more life-size, whereas if you use a zoom lens, you will be able to see that it is a small object. So the last lens on my list is a telephoto lens. Now, telephoto lenses have a very narrow field of view, and they allow you to take photos of a subject from a very far distance. So you'll often see these lenses used by photographers at a soccer match. So they're just generally like these very big and long lenses. Now, also another place where you can use a telephoto lens is at maybe a nature reserve, because that allows you to take photos of animals at a distance without actually scaring them off. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this video helped, and if you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and also don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified when I post my next video. Bye guys!